Tube News Today, February 11, 2022. Headlines. Abiy Ahmed Ali's unity has come with the Illuminati 666, the New World Order of the Satanism.
Mekelle, a city under siege by Dr. Mulugeta Gabrihiwot Berhe, describing how the war that began in 2020 has fundamentally altered life in Tigrayan capital city, Mekelle. The Ethiopian crisis. The nation from Nigeria, says Ethiopia, the most historically important country in Africa, has been plagued by serious political crisis eventuating in cruel civil war in which Tigray.
Health official alleges sexual slavery in Tigray, women blame soldiers. Miscellaneous news. The Amhara shifter and Abiy Ahmed's Prosperity Party are in a grave conflict in Gondar, Amhara. The reason for their clash was the partition of the property looted from Tigray. The Amhara Fano, which is the collection of gangs, the Amhara shifter administration, Abiy Ahmed's child-raping generals and the Eritrean man-eating illiterate troops were effectively destroying Tigray and its monasteries, churches, factories, hospitals, banks, microfinance institutions and any private property. The state of Tigray is the place where world civilization emerged at Aksum, Yaha, Matara, Adulis, etc. Now invaded by the butcher African dictator Isaias Afewerki of Eritrea, the cult butcher Abiy Ahmed Ali, and their allied powers Turkey, Somalia, UAE, Ukraine and so many other countries directly and indirectly. The Amhara invasion for Tigray starts from the time immemorial. The Amhara man-eating people invaded Tigray 5-10 times in the last 100 years. We will deliver you the details in the next times. Abiy Ahmed Ali's unity has come with the worship of Satan or devil. Abiy Ahmed's unity has come with the New World Order, which attempts to unify the world to the worship of Satan or devil. Please watch the slides here attached. Twitter is busy suspending Tigrayans' accounts. Twitter was one of the methods anyone addressed the world. However, it is suspending Tigrayans' accounts mercilessly. It is suspected that Abiy Ahmed might pay dollars to do so, like he did to close the mouth of African leaders including Musa Faki. Abiy is the most corrupted person ever seen in the world. He even holds corrupted PhD without attending and university by paying corrupted money to private universities. This is the first of a three-part essay by Mulugeta Gabrihiwot Berhe, describing how the war that began in 2020 has fundamentally altered life in Tigrayan capital city, Mekelle. Beautiful Mekelle is limping under siege. It is already more than 6 months since it fell under a complete siege. No telecommunication and internet services, no banking and related services and businesses, no electricity, no commercial flights in and out, no land communication outside Tigray as it is 360 degrees encircled by hostile forces. In July, Abiy Ahmed, in his publicly televised speech to his parliament, said that he has reduced Mekelle, the once vibrant city with a pre-war estimated population of 700,000 that was one of the economic and political centers of Ethiopia, to Bashasha, a small district town where he grew up in Jima, Agaro. His statement was followed by an interview with General Abiy Tades, a retired but reinstated lieutenant general, who was asked why the ENDF evacuated Mekelle and most of Tigray. He said the following: "We have destroyed all the institutions of the government, we have destroyed all the social and economic infrastructure, and through these actions we have fulfilled our objectives." He was publicly admitting that his army and its allies have downgraded Tigray to what it is today. General Abiy tacitly expressed the objectives of the military campaign: destruction, pure and simple. As a recognition of what he and his army did, this retired lieutenant general is now promoted into a 4-star general. We invite you to Mekelle. You are free to come if you can pass through the blockade. You are free to travel, navigate the city and witness yourself that Abiy Ahmed has succeeded in reducing Mekelle not to a village like Bashasha, but something worse than that. When you arrive, this is what you will see. First of all, you will see a hungry city. Data from the Bureau of Health of the regional administration indicate that the nutrition situation across Tigray has also been steadily getting worse. Currently over 1.6 million children under 5 and lactating and pregnant women need nutrition intervention, as the rate of malnutrition rate among this group has gone up to 60%. Across Tigray, 54% of water points are not functional, affecting water access to 3.5 million people. As a result of this humanitarian catastrophe, the famine classification is expected to reach the highest level, IPC 5, in the coming few months. This is what you see when you move into Mekelle. Hundreds of thousands of displaced people live in shelters. They live in school compounds and Kibel meeting halls turned into makeshift camps.
Most depend on the support of the city dwellers, as they receive little support from the provisional administration in place from December until June. Since July, the priority of the city dwellers shifted towards supporting the TDF, which left the IDPs without food support. Men and women with families employ themselves as cleaners, daily laborers, and any other job they may find. Most live on just one meal per day by selling whatever valuables they had. Fig fruit, massively supplied from the surrounding villages, served as the main source of food for the months of July and August. The fig season was then replaced by guava fruits as of the end of August. A single fruit of fig and guava were being sold for 3 birr and 5 birr respectively, against its usual price of 1 to 2 birr per piece. The stores of all humanitarian organizations have run empty as a result of the complete siege of Mekelle from any outside assistance. For this reason, the city is full of hungry people, which you can visibly see while walking on the streets. The overall condition of children in the region is critical. Data from the Regional Health Bureau indicates that acute malnutrition in children under 5 has hit 29.1%, of which 7.1% have been diagnosed with severe acute malnutrition, SAM. Let me take you to Ida, the referral hospital in the city, and give you a short tour of the Pediatrics and Child Health Department of the hospital, which is treating children affected by hunger among other things. Here are some of the figures you hear from the head of the department as related to children under treatment for malnutrition. The department, along the Pediatrics and Child Health Department of Mekelle Hospital, regularly screens children under 5 years old from the IDP centers in Mekelle for mid-upper arm circumference, MUAC, a measure of malnutrition. They screened 879 children in January 2021, 2,749 in May, and 1,481 in August. The rate of children diagnosed for malnutrition was 8.9% for January, 11.4% for May, and 20.26% for the month of August. Out of the 300 children diagnosed for malnutrition and under treatment at the 2 hospitals, 260 of them were suffering from medium acute malnutrition, MAM, and the remaining were diagnosed as reaching the stage of severe acute malnutrition, SAM. By January this year, the level of SAM was 7% and MAM was 22%. The number of SAM cases of children treated in the referral hospital has tripled as of September 2021. Unless the current problem of supplies to the hospital, both medical and non-medical inputs, Dr. Mohammed Mustafa, head of the Pediatrics and Child Health Department, indicates that the 260 children with MAM may soon join those children suffering SAM. 16 children died in the 2 hospitals in the months of July to October 2020. The hospital used to administer 10 different vaccines for children, and none of them are being delivered now, so that we might see diseases like polio re-emerging in the coming months. After a continuous blockage of any medical supplies, the ICRC has now begun airlifting some medical supplies, a small move enough to capture headlines in major new outlets. Whether this supply will be enough to reinstate children's vaccination is yet to be seen. The referral system in Tigray is broken, as most of the rural clinics and hospitals are ransacked and non-operational. For this reason, children and mothers who arrive at the referral hospital arrive in critical condition. Dr. Mohammed remembers a woman who carried her child to the hospital and who immediately collapsed of hunger at her arrival to the frontline desk of the hospital. Both mother and child were treated for malnutrition and related health problems. It is very common to find the parents of affected children to be themselves afflicted by hunger. Dr. Mohammed indicates that a number of the children under treatment for MAM and SAM also come from families who normally had a good income, who can't access their deposits and assets elsewhere due to the complete siege of the city. He cited the example of the son of a physician he treated for MAM as an indication to how much the famine has affected society, including the middle class in Mekelle. Underweight delivery of children, less than 2.5 kgs at birth, is increasing, observed by physicians, a problem with multiple, often lifelong, health effects on a child.
You will see a dark city. The federal government made sure that the electric line connecting Tigray to the national grid was cut, and there was no electricity in the city for the first 6 weeks after the TDF took over. The engineers of Tigray then diverted the power generated from the Tekeze Dam to Tigray, and Mekelle started getting light as of the 3rd week of July, but that was again interrupted for 4 more weeks as the dam was overflowing due to heavy rains and stopped generating until the water could get lower. During those days, even those people with generators were hardly using them, as the cost of benzene, when available, exceeded 600 birr per litre as opposed to its official price of 25 birr per litre, while diesel is now fetching 350 birr per litre when available. The price of a single candle rose from 3 birr per piece to 30 birr per piece. The city during those days was dark in the evenings, and Mekelle had no nightlife. For that matter, you no longer hear loud music coming out of bars and pubs. Most of them are closed, and those open serve locally brewed beverages like suwa and selim suwa, locally brewed beer, or maize, honey wine or mead. These are the common notices posted you see at the entrance of those open bars and pubs: suwa alina, filter alina, maize alina, maize hagasalam. Whenever bars have something to sell, their transaction cost and therefore their selling cost is high and not affordable for the customers that are caught by cash shortage as they can't withdraw any money from their bank accounts. There are hardly any cars in the streets of Mekelle due to the unavailability of fuel in gas stations. What can be bought in the streets is smuggled and costs beyond what most people can afford. The little fuel left in the city is rationed to the few taxis that operate. This has made the waiting time for a taxi long and expensive when found. As a result, most people in Mekelle walk. You will see hospitals with no medicine and functioning diagnosis equipment. Some pharmacies and drug stores are closed as their shelves emptied. Many of them open their doors for few hours, but do not offer much. There are too many stories of the untimely death of patients who were surviving under drug regimens for chronic health issues. Replenishment of drugs for patients of diabetics, hypertension, and HIV patients are not available. The only kidney dialysis center in Ida Referral Hospital has stopped providing service for patients over the last 3 months, and several of its patients have already died as a result of the discontinued services. Here are some more facts you will find at the referral hospital. Drug availability in the hospital before the eruption of the conflict averaged 70 to 80% of its requirements. As the war began, the availability of medicines continually decreased month by month to reach 20 to 30% after the city fell under a complete siege. Hospital data indicates that the total stock of antibiotics and anti-pain medication will last only for 2 weeks. It has already run out of chemotherapy and several lab and kidney dialysis agents. The whole city, for that matter the whole region, currently doesn't have a single functioning advanced imaging equipment like CT scan and MIR due to lack of parts. The ICRC has begun airlifting some medical supplies as of last week, each day dropping 3 to 4 quintals of medical supplies, a news that have already captured the headlines of major media outlets. Whether this supply will continue and make significant difference in the service is yet to be seen. The overall condition of the health services in Tigray is one of the most heartbreaking moments for Tigrayan physicians. Drive Mohammed Mustafa says in frustration, "You know how to diagnose a disease. You have the equipment and the expertise to do the diagnosis. But you can't diagnose either. A reagent is not available or the machine needs a replacement for a fast-moving item. You diagnose a patient for a disease and you prescribe the medicine, but you don't have that medicine whose cost at times is token when available. Yet, you see that patient dying because there is nothing you could do to save his life. What else could be heartbreaking for a physician who availed herself for a service?"
This is the first of a 3-part essay by Mulugeta Berhe, describing how the war that began in 2020 has fundamentally altered life in Tigrayan capital city, Mekelle. Beautiful Mekelle is limping under siege. It is already more than 6 months since it fell under a complete siege. No telecommunication and internet services, no banking and related services and businesses, no electricity, no commercial flights in and out, no land communication outside Tigray as it is 360 degrees encircled by hostile forces. In July, Abiy Ahmed, in his publicly televised speech to his parliament, said that he has reduced Mekelle, the once vibrant city with a pre-war estimated population of 700,000 that was one of the economic and political centers of Ethiopia, to Bashasha, a small district town where he grew up in Jima, Agaro. His statement was followed by an interview with General Abiy, a retired but reinstated lieutenant general, who was asked why the ENDF evacuated Mekelle and most of Tigray. He said the following: "We have destroyed all the institutions of the government, we have destroyed all the social and economic infrastructure, and through these actions we have fulfilled our objectives." He was publicly admitting that his army and its allies have downgraded Tigray to what it is today. General Abiy tacitly expressed the objectives of the military campaign: destruction, pure and simple. As a recognition of what he and his army did, this retired lieutenant general is now promoted into a 4-star general. "We invite you to Mekelle. You are free to come if you can pass through the blockade. You are free to travel, navigate the city and witness yourself that Abiy Ahmed has succeeded in reducing Mekelle not to a village like Bashasha, but something worse than that. When you arrive, this is what you will see."
The Ethiopian crisis. The nation from Nigeria. Says Ethiopia, the most historically important country in Africa, has been plagued by serious political crisis eventuating in cruel civil war in which Tigray.
Ethiopia, the most historically important country in Africa, has been plagued by serious political crisis eventuating in cruel civil war in which Tigray, a rebellious state, is fighting against the federal government of Ethiopia. Unfortunately, it is the common people of Ethiopia who are paying the price. Ethiopia is in the volatile Horn of Africa, where people of different cultures are lumped together and where the three monotheistic religions of Judaism, Christianity and Islam were to be found in the past. Ethiopia is an ancient country that existed millennia before the birth of Christ. It was founded according to its myth of origin by King Menelik I, the son of Queen of Sheba and the Israeli King Solomon. Some part of it, like Aksum and Kush, were well known in ancient times as centers of civilizations belonging to the same cultural area that produced the great civilization of ancient Egypt. In medieval Europe, the place used to be referred to as the land of Prester John, a mythical Christian king in Africa. The country before the disastrous attempted colonization by Italy, which ended when Ethiopia inflicted a military defeat on Italy in 1896, was ruled by emperors descended from the Solomonic dynasty. This dynasty provided a rallying point for Ethiopia in times of foreign invasion or national implosion. In modern times, Emperor Haile Selassie, who ruled as regent from 1916 to 1930 when he was Rastafari Makonnen, and as emperor from 1930 to 1974, was able to mobilize his people to resist the forces of Benito Mussolini, the fascist dictator of Italy, in 1935 when he tried to wipe out the humiliation Italy suffered from the Ethiopian military defeat of Adwa in 1896. The free world aided the emperor, who escaped to Britain but returned to the country in 1941. Since the end of the Second World War, the country has been held together in spite of the vociferous tendencies pulling the country apart by the strong government provided by the emperor, and after the emperor was overthrown in 1974, by the military, which continued the era of strong central government. The country has passed through various military governments which of course lacked the kind of legitimacy the Solomonic dynasty had. There was an attempt during the brutal rule of Colonel Haile Mariam Mengistu from 1977 to 1991 to build a socialist ideology around the military regime when he was General Secretary of Ethiopian Workers' Party. Many opponents were murdered and all opposition was suppressed. People's homes were seized and given to the poor under the guise of proletarian revolution. Eventually the regime was toppled by the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front (EPRDF), and Mengistu fled the country to Mugabe's Harare and possibly now to South Africa for political asylum. After some period of instability, a democratic left-wing government under Prime Minister Meles Zenawi from Tigray as leader of Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF) was installed in 1991 and 9191. He ruled the country with the traditional Ethiopian harsh rule, broking no opposition until he died in office in 2012. He introduced the idea of ethnic federalism into Ethiopia, an idea pregnant with future problems as we can see today. He brought a lot of economic development to the country, and began building the mega dam on the White Nile, whose origin is in Ethiopia, with the idea of generating immense hydroelectric power to industrialize the country. This great development plan could possibly bring Ethiopia into future war with Sudan and Egypt, whose very lives depend on the uninterrupted flow of the Nile into their countries. It was during his regime that Eritrea, which had been fighting to secede from Ethiopia, was granted independence, and the new Ethiopian constitution granted full autonomy to all the country's provinces with the power to secede if any wanted to do so. Apparently, the framers of the constitution never imagined any group would like to take up the option. The secession of Eritrea, the former Italian colony, from Ethiopia turned the country into a landlocked country with serious implication for its economic development, because for years Ethiopia and Eritrea remained in state of belligerency. Ethiopia and Eritrea are peopled by same people, separated by colonialism. Health official alleges sexual slavery in Tigray. Women blame soldiers. Hundreds of women have reported being subjected to horrific sexual violence by Ethiopian and allied Eritrean soldiers. Adigrat, Ethiopia, April 15. Reuters. The young mother was trying to get home with food for her 2 children when she says soldiers pulled her off a minibus in Ethiopia's Tigray region, claiming it was overloaded. It was the beginning of an 11-day ordeal in February, during which she says she was repeatedly raped by 23 soldiers who forced nails, a rock and other items into her vagina, and threatened her with a knife. Doctors showed Reuters the blood-stained stone and 2 3-inch nails they said they had removed from her body. The woman, 27, is among hundreds who have reported that they were subjected to horrific sexual violence by Ethiopian and allied Eritrean soldiers after fighting broke out in November in the mountainous northern region of Ethiopia, doctors said. Some women were held captive for extended periods, days or weeks at a time, said Dr. Fasika Mdslasi, the top public health official for the government-appointed interim administration in Tigray. Women are being kept in sexual slavery, Fasika told Reuters. The perpetrators have to be investigated. Reports of rape have been circulating for months. But Fasika's assertion, based on women's accounts, marks the first time an Ethiopian official, in this case a top regional health officer, has made a sexual slavery accusation in connection with the conflict in Tigray. In addition, 8 other doctors at 5 public hospitals told Reuters that most of the rape victims described their attackers as either Ethiopian government soldiers or Eritrean troops. It was more common for women to report sexual violence by Eritrean soldiers, the doctor said. The Eritreans have been helping Ethiopia's central government fight the region's former ruling party, the Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF), in a conflict plaguing the Horn of Africa nation. Taken together, the descriptions paint the most detailed picture to date of the sexual violence against women in Tigray and the military's alleged involvement in it. Most people interviewed for this article declined to be identified. They said they feared reprisals, including possible violence by soldiers who guard the hospitals and towns. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed acknowledged in a speech to Parliament on March 23 that atrocities were being committed by raping women, and promised that the perpetrators would be punished. He did not identify the alleged perpetrators. He said then for the first time that Eritrean soldiers had entered the conflict in Tigray in support of the Ethiopian government after the TPLF attacked military bases across the region in the early hours of November 4. Ethiopia's government had previously denied this, and the Eritrean government still does not acknowledge their troops' presence. The TPLF was the dominant power in the central government when Eritrea fought a bloody border war with Ethiopia a generation ago. Neither the Ethiopian nor the Eritrean government responded to Reuters' questions about specific cases raised by women and their doctors, or about the accusation of sexual slavery. No charges have been announced by civilian or military prosecutors against any soldiers. However, officials in both countries emphasize that their governments have zero tolerance for sexual violence, a point Abiy's spokeswoman, Billine Sayum, said the Prime Minister reiterated recently in discussions with military leaders. The alleged sexual violence has drawn international attention. Billine said the United Nations, the African Union and Ethiopia's state-appointed Human Rights Commission have been authorized to carry out joint investigations into alleged abuses by all sides in the conflict. That includes the criminal clique, she said, referring to the TPLF. An Ethiopian military spokesman and the head of a government task force on the Tigray crisis did not respond to phone calls and text messages seeking comment. Reuters could not reach military leaders in either country. Asked about the reports that Eritrean troops have committed rapes in Tigray and are keeping women in sexual slavery, the country's information minister, Yemane Gebremichael, accused TPLF activists of coaching sympathizers to create false testimonies. All the fabricated stories, which are alien to our culture and laws, are peddled to cover up the crimes of the TPLF which started the war, he told Reuters in a written response. Reuters was unable to reach a TPLF spokesman. Records of abuse. Fasika, the health official, said at least 829 cases of sexual assault have been reported at the 5 hospitals since the conflict in Tigray began. Those cases were likely the tip of the iceberg, Fasika said. Rape is underreported in Ethiopia because it carries a huge stigma. Also, most of the region's health facilities are no longer functioning, and travel between towns remains dangerous, he said. Most of the women who have come forward are either pregnant or sustained severe physical injury from the rapes, Fasika said. Reuters interviewed 11 women who said they had been raped by soldiers from Eritrea, Ethiopia or both. 4 said they were kidnapped, taken to military camps and gang-raped, in some cases alongside other women. The women did not know the camp names but said they were located near Mekelle and the towns of Adaga, Hamas, Wukro and Sharero. 5 other women said they were held in fields or deserted houses for up to 6 days. And 2 said they were raped in their own homes. Reuters could not independently verify their accounts. However, all told similar stories of being beaten and brutalized. Healthcare providers confirmed that the 11 women's injuries were consistent with the events they described, and they showed Reuters medical records for 3 of the women detailing their conditions. The healthcare providers also shared details of 9 other cases of sexual assault, including the ordeals of 2 14-year-old girls. Although Ethiopia's government declared victory over the TPLF in November, fighting continues in some areas, and medical workers say new rapes are reported at the region's health facilities every day. Tell my story. The 27-year-old mother said uniformed soldiers from Eritrea pulled her off a minibus on the road from Mekelle to the city of Adigrat on February 6. They tied up and marched her through fields to a bush camp, she said. After 11 days of rapes and beatings, she said, the soldiers forced nails, cotton, plastic bags and a rock into her vagina and left her alone in the bush. Villagers found her unconscious and brought her to a nearby hospital. She said she was still bleeding from severe internal injuries and could not control her urine, walk without a crutch or sit up for long periods. One leg was broken, she said. She also described a different kind of pain. While in the hospital, she has no way to speak to her 4-year-old son and 6-year-old daughter because the Eritrean soldiers took her cell phone. She had left the children with her mother to search for food and never returned. At the time, the family had less than a week's worth of bread. I don't know anything, if they are dead or alive, she said. The enemy destroyed my life. A 32-year-old mother in Mekelle told Reuters that soldiers removed her from a minibus on the same road at the end of February. They were dressed in Ethiopian uniforms, she said, but spoke with an Eritrean accent and had traditional facial scarification typical of the neighboring country. She said they shot her 12-year-old son dead in front of her, then brought her to a camp where she was held with other female captives and repeatedly raped for 10 days. Tell my story, she said. This is happening to women out there right now. I want this to end with me. A 28-year-old house cleaner said soldiers grabbed her from a street in Mekelle on the afternoon of February 10 and took her to a field outside a military base where she was raped by more than 10 men wearing Ethiopian or Eritrean uniforms. Wiping away tears, she said that during her 2-week ordeal, soldiers doused her with alcohol and mocked her as they assaulted her. She escaped when her captors were distracted by gunfire, she said. Shot for resisting. The government has set up a task force separate from the Human Rights Commission to investigate the reports of sexual violence. Its head, Mebrahit Assefa, said the body includes representatives from the Regional Health Bureau, the Attorney General's Office and federal police.